A reading from Ephesians 4, 1 through 16. Christians share unity and diversity. St. Paul writes that our unity is found in having one body, Spirit, Lord, faith, baptism, and God. Our diversity is seen in various forms of ministry, whose goal is equipping the saints and building up the body of Christ. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you are called to the hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. But each of us was given grace according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore it is said, when he ascended on high, he made captive itself a captive. He gave gifts to his people. When it says he ascended, what does it mean but he has also descended to the lower parts of the earth? He who has descended is the same one who has ascended far above all heavens, so that he might fill all things. The gifts he gave were that some would be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, and teachers, to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until all of us come to the unity of the faith, of the knowledge of the Son of God, to maturity, to the future of the full stature of Christ. We must no longer be children, tossed to and fro and blown about from every wind of doctrine, by people's trickery, by their craftiness in deceitful scheming. But speaking the truth in love, we must grow up in every way to him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by every ligament with which it is equipped, as each part is working properly, promotes the body's growth in building itself up in love.
Good morning. I'm going to invite some of our high school mission team up to share with you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Phillips, and I have had the pleasure of serving as a volunteer leader with the high school EDGE program, going on my 6th year here. And this morning, I'm going to introduce some of our students, our juniors and seniors, who accompanied us on the mission trip, and then give you some background about our work down in Dixon before I turn it over to them to kind of share their testimony and experience. This is Rhea Yadav, Caitlin Nuring, Natalie Shepard, Braden Green, Ryan Hall, Samantha Smith, Katie Kascel, and then John Boozy. And you're gonna hear from them here in a little bit about the ways in which the Lord worked in their heart and the things that they were able to accomplish while they were down sweating it out for Jesus in Houston, Texas area. Sweating it out is quite literal. Yeah, on the Thursday, the last day that we worked, finally had the courage to look at the weather.com app and see how hot it was. It's 103 degrees real temperature that day with 80% humidity and a heat index of 124. So it was warm. And I think some of the guys like Adam would testify that when he was up putting on that ceiling paneling that it might even been 10, 20 degrees warmer up there on the ceiling. So they really worked hard the 9 days that we were traveling. And to give you a little background on Dickinson, it is right between Houston and Galveston, Texas. About 35 minutes from the Gulf. And so when we say that they were impacted by Hurricane Harvey, it wasn't so much that the Gulf of Mexico was in Dickinson. Rather, the storm system, Hurricane Harvey, stayed and spun over Dickinson area for 12 hours, dropping between 1 to 2 inches of rain each hour there in Dickinson. So it was an extraordinary rainfall amount. At one point in Dickinson, the building that we stayed in, Pine Community Church, that building that we were in while we were down there was still being renovated from the hurricane the previous spring. Okay. Is that better? There we go. The previous spring the previous fall received 50 inches of water. So the place that we were staying in was currently in the renovation process while we stayed upstairs and went out and served during the day. A little bit about the community of Dickinson. Its population was really underinsured for a catastrophe of such nature. 8 out of every 10 didn't have flood insurance, and the 2 out of 10 that did were well underinsured for what happened. We were able to talk to some homeowners and community members throughout the week, and the one thing that was a bit terrifying, as I'm sure we all saw on the media for weeks at a time, was the way that the flooding occurred and how it came about. The one homeowner talked about how when they went to bed that night, they had a little bit of rain in the backyard. It had been raining for a few hours. When they woke up at midnight, they had over a foot of water in their house, and as they tried to evacuate and pack a bag, they were getting shocked by the electrical currents as they walked by the outlets on the ground because they were all submerged in water. And so in the middle of the night, with no power and communication systems being down and no emergency responders to get to them, they had to seek refuge in neighborhoods. And one homeowner shared with us that there was only one 2-story house in the neighborhood in which housed all the residents to keep them safe for the next 24 hours until they could start getting emergency boats to evacuate them and take them up to the Gulf Highway. So it was a pretty extraordinary and traumatic event for a lot of those involved. And we were fortunate enough to work with an organization down there called 4B, which is a disaster relief nonprofit formed by many area churches, as far as churches all across the country. And when we got down there, they were the ones that really took over the leadership of our work projects. As you can see on the screen here, on one of our first days of working, our students were able to go to a local vacant grocery store and receive some hands-on training in the areas of drywall, taping, mudding, and working the power equipment and various tools. And that was really neat to be able to see a lot of our students right here from Marion, Iowa, who probably aren't out building houses for fun, get a lot of firsthand experience and really become very, very good and skilled at that trade. When they were able to go back to the work sites, they worked in 3 different properties and spent all of our time doing that, and it was really incredible to see the growth that they had. Just a testament to the way that you all have worked in their lives and in their hearts. One story I want to share before I turn it over to Samantha is in the group that I was in, we found out that 4B was much more of a starting relief organization. So what they would do is they'd help them get it gutted, studded out, and maybe new electrical run if that was needed. And then they helped organizations like ours come in and just do drywall hanging and some screws. Well, we had a group of girls led by Emmy Boozy, Samantha Smith, Kylie Fink, and they really, really wanted to make sure that we were able to bless our homeowner as much as we possibly could. So they asked the question before our final day and said, well, what happens after we leave? And so we as leadership went back to the organization and said, what does happen? And they said, well, to be honest, we'll probably have to move to the next property. And that wasn't good enough for those young ladies. So they said, well, what can we do? So we went out, Resurrection, purchased some drywall corners for folks, and we went out and we finished as much as we possibly could before we left to leave Miss Melissa in the most advantageous position as possible, because now from here on out it's going to be up to what she has in the bank, what she can afford to get finished. And so I thought that was an incredible show of the mercy and grace that our students have learned here in these walls and want to go out and do forth in the community. The last thing I'll say is thank you. Thank you for supporting us. It might not seem like it's too far away, but when we do the meals, the Lenten meals, the Easter meals, that helps these students, all 36 folks that went, raise dollars to be able to afford to go out and further the Lord's work and His Word. So I appreciate that. And then if anyone in the congregation wants to encourage family or friends to either attend Edge on Wednesday nights or become involved as a leader yourselves, we would absolutely love to have you. So thank you so much, and go ahead, Samantha.
Hi, my name is Sam, and this is my 3rd mission trip that I've been on. And one of the things that I loved the most about this trip was getting to meet Melissa, who was one of the homeowners that my group got to work with during the week. And it was just so nice to talk with her and to hear her story and her journey about the hurricane. And we could see how grateful she was for all the work that we were doing in her house. And it was cool because as we got to serve Melissa, we could see how she was serving us back. One of the first days that we were working there was very hot, and she brought us a portable air conditioner and fans to keep us cool. And so just every day when she came back in and checked on us and talked with us, it was amazing to see that during these tough times for her, she's still able to love and serve others. So that was amazing to witness.
Hi, my name is Ryan Hall. This is my second mission trip. I went into this nice lady's house, Melissa's house, and I didn't get to hear her story at the beginning. She was waiting about 11 months for her house to be at the point that it is right now, and it still isn't fully rebuilt. And so before I heard her story, I was helping put up insulation and sheetrock, and overall we were just sweating a lot. And so I was working in what I believe was her kitchen area, and we were almost done putting up the sheetrock, very close, but unfortunately we had to leave before we finished that. But on the upside, I did get to hear her story, and it was very eye-opening and honestly life-changing. It changed my perspective on the place that I was working. It changed my perspective on the fact that I wasn't just working on a house, I was working on a home, her home, and that we had to work on it as best as we could in like the best quality, not just trying to finish as fast as we can, but with the best quality. And I'm really blessed to be able to go on this trip with my friends and work alongside them with God with us. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Braden. This is my second trip. So when we got to the houses, I didn't really speak much to the homeowner, and then one day I asked the man who was there how long he had the house, and he said he built it in 1964, and that's where he raised his kids. He had, I think, 2 sons and 1 daughter. But later on in the week, I was talking to the daughter, and she said that at the time that the rain and all that came in and there was the flooding, her brother was living there with his wife and kids, and then also his kids, grandkids. So, you know, there's quite a few people in the home at the time, and she was saying that the night that it was raining, he woke up to there already being a foot of water in his house. So he got his wife, and he got his kids, and he got his grandkids, and they all got out of there. And as Ryan was saying, the outlets are all really low, and so they were having to deal with the electrical currents in the water and all that. And so they said when they came back a couple weeks later to the house, when the water drained out, they found mold on the lower part of the walls and little pinpoints that just looked like little, you know, somebody took a pin and poked holes in the walls. They were just little tiny black dots, and they came back a couple weeks later again, and it was just black mold covering every surface of every wall in that entire house. So we got there, and it was literally just gutted to the studs, no insulation anywhere, well, in a couple places, but not really anywhere at all. The ceiling was gone and all that. So it was really just a crazy experience, an eye-opening experience to see, you know, how blessed that we are to have homes to go home to where they're heated and air conditioned, and there's roofing and drywall and all that still there, and how this hurricane turned these people's lives upside down. It was really great to see her optimism and all that. So,
And one story that our homeowner told us was that after they left their home, because it was raining and it wasn't just a tide that came in, the water stayed for a long time. And a few days after she was out of her home, her and her friends were talking about who was going to get back in their homes and when. And they asked each other, have you seen so-and-so? Did he get out of his house? And it was one of their friends that was in a wheelchair. And nobody had known whether he got out of his house or not. So they ended up finding a vehicle that could access his home, and they went, and he was in his wheelchair sitting in water and hadn't been able to escape his house, and nobody had come to get him. So our homeowner actually went to his house and helped him get out of that. And so it was just another story of how this hurricane just kind of wrecked their lives, but they were looking out for each other and working together in that. So that was another story that they shared with us that was just kind of unreal for us to hear.
Hi, my name's Natalie. This is my second mission trip with Edge, and it was just great to see that even though we struggled daily, we still got so much accomplished in each and every house. We walked into our house Monday afternoon after we had trained, learned how to put up drywall, use power tools and mud and all that, and it was a great thing to learn. And when we got into the house, it was very eye-opening because, like Braden said, every single wall was down to the studs. You could see the electrical wires, the outlets, and the plumbing in the bathrooms. And it was just really eye-opening because it was no longer a story that you heard on the TV. It was real life, and we were experiencing the damage that the hurricane had caused. And we didn't really know where to start in this house because every wall was needing work. So we just picked a wall and we went for it. And it was great to see that even though we struggled with the heat, I know every day I sweat through all of my clothes. I had a layer of dirt on me, and it was just dust was flying everywhere. We didn't really have eye protection. But yes, on the last sorry. But our group accomplished so much. By the time we left the house, almost every single wall was insulated and had drywall put up, and most walls were mudded as well. So the house was ready for the next steps to be taken. And it was just great to see that we could just bring this man's house back together, and then he could move into it soon.
I'm Caitlin. This is also my second mission trip. And throughout the week, it would have been super easy as a team, not just individual groups, but overall as a team, to complain about having to do the work or just go to do what needs to be done, or it's so hot, we don't want to be here, I'm just going to take a 20-minute break. But it was cool to see as the days progressed and as the work got harder, across the board, all of us wanted to work harder, and we wanted to stay longer and get more done and take less breaks and do everything we could to move this house along and really make it into a home, because we weren't just working for ourselves. We weren't working because we wanted to look good on a mission trip. We had met these people, and we wanted to work to help their lives and to change their lives that were uprooted almost a year ago, and they still didn't have anywhere to call home. And it was cool to see every individual was working to show God's love to other people, and they weren't working just because. They were working to show love not only to the homeowners, but to the house, which will in turn show more love to the homeowners once it's done. And I just think across the board that was super eye-opening to me on this trip, just how desperately every single person wanted to be there and wanted to work as hard as possible just to help the homeowners that we hadn't met before.
Hi guys, my name's Rhea. This is my first year going on a mission trip through this ministry. The biggest thing that I probably took away from this trip was how important community is. Throughout the days, the 5 days that we were working there, it got really hard at times. It was really hot. People probably weren't drinking enough water as they were supposed to. People ended up
Yes, they were, Rhea.
Sorry, Kate. So people ended up getting cranky, and it was kind of hard just to work together at times. But throughout it all, we kept encouraging each other and lifting each other up and telling each other that it's going to be okay and that we need to keep working, and that made it a lot easier to keep going and push through the struggles that we were dealing with. So for me, kind of like growing up, I didn't have the best community, and this trip really enforced just how important community is, and how the Lord calls us to do life with people and to have people there to cry with and rejoice with and just be there for you. So one thing I want to tell you guys is if you don't have a community right now, find a person or two that you trust and just build a community from there, because it's so worth the wait. You are called to do life with people, and it's just the best thing, and that's something that I learned from this trip.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about these kids, as you can see on the next slide, one more, is how well they did with baby Claire. Claire goes on all of our trips with us, and she's 3 now, and just has been raised with these kids. And in this photo, we were at a hotel on our way home, and Claire wanted to swim because she had been in the van all day. So all the kids kind of just go down to the pool, like in their clothes from the day, just hanging out. And one by one, Claire says, "Natalie, will you come swim?" Natalie jumps in her dress. "Sam, will you come swim?" Sam jumps in our clothes. And by the end, all the kids are swimming with Claire, just having a blast together, and they just do so well after days of driving, just making the most of every opportunity and helping the leaders. And we had 3 college kids go on our trip with us to just help with the students and to help with Claire, and they were just a phenomenal asset, Jared Feigenbaum and Luke Sloterdijk and Sydney Smith, to the ministry that we got to do with these students. So it was just a blast to have all of them along with us as well.
In case you didn't get the message of war in Texas, that picture in the pool was like getting out of the pool is like walking into a giant hot air dryer. This is the most amazing. It was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So when we say the conditions were rough, I think that's a true statement. In fact, the sleeping quarters were, concrete floor. Imagine 10 boys in a room, stinking it up. because they, held hands and sang Kumbaya, but they challenge each other. They really do. They challenge each other to live as Christ calls us to live, and they support each other through that. And so when they talk about being a community, they mean that. They live that every day. So I couldn't be more proud of all these guys for the great work they did during the day, but the great work they did in the spirit really the entire time we were there. So give yourself a round of applause. You guys were awesome. One final thing, if you're wondering how to motivate your child to work, just use some different language. So like I've never seen my daughter work as hard as I saw her work that week. So now we use things like, let's go to the basement, clean, we're gonna do some mission work downstairs. Works really well. So thanks again for all your support. We greatly appreciate it. And like Ryan said, get to Edge Wednesday nights. We start the 29th, I think, of August. Is that right?
Yep.
Rock and roll. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for coming and sharing.